So you might remember last year we took a look at the Google Chrome bit, which is a little HDMI stick that you plug into the back of your TV to turn it into a Chrome OS device. And if you asked yourself, why would I ever want to do that? Well, Intel had an alternative for you. This right here is the Compute Stick, an x86 PC crammed into what looks like a large flash drive, and today we're going to see how it handles Windows 11. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So when this thing first came out back in 2015, you had two choices if you wanted to pick one of them up. There was a version that shipped with Windows 8.1 and one with Ubuntu Linux, which is the model that I have here. The Windows one came out first and would have set you back $150, but if you waited a few months, you could have saved $40 and picked up the Linux version. And you can see this one has been sitting in its shrink wrap ever since. So we're going to crack it open for the first time today. We'll use it the way you were supposed to, and then we'll see if we can even get Windows 11 to run on this thing and maybe try to run a couple of games. But I suspect we're going to not have the smoothest experience doing that because this model doesn't even come close to meeting Windows 11 system requirements. Except for the CPU, which is a 1.33 GHz Intel Atom quad-core processor, but it only has 1 GB of RAM, where Windows 11 needs 4 times that, and 8 GB of onboard storage. So we're definitely going to have to make use of the microSD card slot on this thing, or maybe an external USB hard drive. Now, the Windows version of this thing did come with a little bit beefier hardware. They upped the RAM to 2 GB, and it came with 32 gigs of onboard storage. So that extra $40 surprisingly wasn't just for the Windows tax. And there were a couple other models of this thing before the entire line was discontinued in 2020. So let's go ahead and set the Chrome bit aside since we don't need that. And we're going to crack this thing open for the first time, and we'll see what we get. So I'm just going to slice the shrink wrap there on the bottom. I see there's this little pull tab that we can pull to, get the whole thing out. So we'll just do that. And there it is. Now, the Chrome bit was released the same year that the Intel Compute Stick was, and this thing retailed for $85, whereas, again, the Ubuntu version here of the Compute Stick was $110. So you had to spend a little bit more to get this one, but I think that the Intel Compute Stick is a far superior product, not only because it runs a real desktop operating system, no offense to the Chrome OS lovers out there, but also this thing is an x86 PC, whereas this thing is an ARM device, so you had a lot more flexibility with what you could install on this if you wanted to, put another OS or run some third-party software on it. However, one leg up I can give to the Chrome bit is this thing does feel like a more premium product. It has a little bit more heft to it. I honestly like the design of it a little bit better. Looks like we've got a little bit of shrink wrap to peel off here, so we'll go ahead and do that. And just taking a closer look at this thing, you can see you got your HDMI port there on the bottom. You've got a full-size USB-A here on the left, along with your micro USB port for powering the thing. Power button right there, and then on the other side you have your micro SD card slot for expansion. We'll go ahead and set it aside here and see what else we get in the box, which I imagine is going to be your cables and your instruction manual and all that. Here's your quick start guide. We may refer to this later, probably not. You've got your HDMI extender, just in case, your TV had the ports directly on the back and this thing was going to stick out and the TV wouldn't go against the wall. So that's a nice inclusion for sure. You've got your power cable right here. And then here are your various plug adapters, because I guess this was just one model sold around the world. So we've got various different connectors here. This is the one that we'll need for North America. And then here is your wall wart for charging. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get this thing set up. And like I said, we'll mess around with the stock install of Ubuntu a little bit. And then we'll see if we can even get it to run Windows 11, which I suspect we're going to run into problems, but that just adds to the fun, doesn't it? And speaking of fun, aren't ad reads from today's video sponsor Surfshark so much fun? I certainly think so, because their VPN is something I've been using for years now. It's great for getting around those annoying region lock messages because you can easily change your device's location by connecting to one of their over 3,000 servers hosted in 100 countries. They also throw in some nice extras like their alternative ID email masking feature, but my absolute favorite thing about them is the fact that they allow unlimited simultaneous connections. So your entire family can use a single subscription on all of your devices at the same time. Plus, they don't keep any logs, so your browsing history is kept private, and all of their plans come backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you sign up at surfshark.com/michaelmjd, you'll get 4 extra months for free with the purchase of a year or 2-year plan. So be sure to check them out, and huge thanks again to Surfshark for making this video possible. Alright, so we've got this thing hooked up. I've got an Apple USB keyboard plugged in with a mouse plugged into that, and we're going to connect the micro USB power cable. And there's a light that came on. We'll see if the monitor does anything. I'm assuming we'll have to actually press the power button here to get it to turn on. There we go. CMOS time not set. That sounds about right. But it looks like it's just booting right up into Ubuntu. I can tell from the color of the boot screen here before it's even loaded up all the way. You know, I am kind of wondering if this is going to be branded in any way, like with an Intel logo, or if we're just going to go through like a regular setup, you know, just completely unmodified from what you would download from the website. And we made it to the configuration wizard, so we'll go through here and get this thing on the network. First thing I'm going to do once we get to the desktop is change the resolution so it looks a little bit better for you guys. So we're on the network. We'll just leave it in the Pacific time zone. I suppose that's fine. But yeah, so far just a very, very standard looking Ubuntu setup. So yeah, thank you for choosing Ubuntu 14.04. Nothing really about thanks for choosing the compute stick or anything like that. This is all just standard stuff, which isn't really surprising, but I thought it would have been kind of cool if we got like a custom branded edition of Ubuntu here. And I just found this out, but something really cool about this version of Ubuntu as well as 16.04 is Canonical extended the support for it by a couple of years. So 14.04 came out in April of 2014. It was going to be originally supported till April of 2022, but they extended that by 2 years to April of 2024. So this just went out of support a little over a year ago, which means there's probably a ton of updates that we're going to have to install. However, that being said, we're probably not going to bother doing that since we're just going to be installing Windows 11 anyways. Although we won't be overwriting this install of Ubuntu since we're going to be using an external storage medium. But it looks like we have finished the, I guess, setup process there. We're just waiting for it to tell us something. I imagine it's going to ask us to reboot. Oh, and it's applying some changes. Let's see what it's doing. I wonder if it's been getting some of those new updates automatically. I see it removing some stuff, so it very well may be installing newer versions. We'll just see just for the heck of it. We'll run a apt-get update and just see if it can find any updated packages once we get this whole thing installed, of course. So here we are. Go ahead and sign in to my account. Alright, we have a keyboard shortcuts window that we can't seem to close, and no, it is not a part of the desktop wallpaper, but we're gonna go in and change the resolution. And yeah, like why, there we go. Okay, that finally closed out of there. So, can we change the resolution from here? I guess we can change the wallpaper to something that kind of shows up on camera a little bit better. And then let's just go back to all settings, displays, and we'll tone this down a bit. There we go. That should hopefully look a lot better for you guys. Updated software has been issued since Ubuntu 14.04 was released. Do you want to install it now? We've got 354.8 megabytes of stuff to download, a bunch of security updates, it looks like, if it will display everything here. It like just showed it. There we go. Okay, so we got security updates, we got some archive manager stuff, LibreOffice. Oh my gosh, look at all this stuff. And then of course Ubuntu base, there's been some updates to the base system. Because this thing, according to the box, this thing has a date of manufacture of August 3rd, 2015. So it's been sitting in this box for a long time. So it's definitely pretty behind in terms of software updates. But like I said, we're not going to bother really going through those updates because we're just going to, install Windows 11 anyways. But I do want to hop into the Software Center and see kind of what still works on here. Just check out what version of Chromium this is. I'm kind of curious. And then of course we have LibreOffice as well. We can open that up. Although we have to be cautious here with what we're opening because again, we only have 1 gigabyte of RAM. And that's why I think Windows 11 is going to be pretty miserable on here. It's if we can even get it to install. If you guys saw my Windows 11 on a Raspberry Pi video where we really struggled to get that running on the Pi 4, yeah, I think we're going to have that kind of experience going on. But let's see, under About Chromium, this is version 65.0. Blah, 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 blah. Although it's pulling an up-to-date copyright date right there. This version was pushed out on March 20th, 2018, so that means it did update some packages during the initial setup process. And I guess, like I said, we can go in here and let's see what their star apps are. We got TuxPaint. Oh yeah, okay, so of course we need to follow our rule of making some monstrosity and then saving it to the desktop and never seeing it again. Oh, this is neat. We kind of have what almost looks like some aqua buttons, like from early macOS 10 versions on here. That's kind of neat. And yeah, this is just, like like it said, it's a kid's drawing tool. So, this kind of reminds me of stuff like Kid Picks. So, I don't know, we'll just maybe draw out, like, like we always do, MJD, and then, I don't know. Oh, we can make some shapes, too. Yeah, we can get some pentagons going on. We can make some ellipses and some circles and crap, and, okay, just, like, cover the whole... Yeah, so why don't we just cover the whole thing up just with various shapes, and then you're never going to be able to tell that it was like what was behind it originally. There we go. Isn't that exciting? So yeah, that's Tux Paint. Yes, I want to quit, and yeah, I want to save that. Are you kidding me? So that's Tux Paint, and that's pretty much all I really want to say about Ubuntu on here. It works. You could download software. You could update this thing to, as of April 2024 when it went out of support. Let's see how it handles Windows 11. So, I guess we'll get started by shutting this down, and I went ahead and I've burned a Windows 11, or rather written a Windows 11 installer to this USB drive, and I've got a micro SD card, a 64 gig one, that we're going to pop into the side here of the compute stick. And then, yeah, I guess we're going to have to get a powered USB hub, aren't we? So we'll get this old thing out and pop our USB drive in there, unplug our keyboard from here, plug that into here, and plug in the USB hub. And yeah, let's see if it just automatically detects this as a bootable device when we power it on. I imagine there's probably a key we have to press here. Let's see. Okay, well, F2 was to enter setup. It is just booting off of Ubuntu, so I did not do that fast enough. So let's just power this off and try again. And we'll just hold down F2. I saw there were some other options too. I imagine like F12 might be just bring up a boot menu. But if we can go in here and go to configuration and then boot drive order. So we'll move USB up to here, and then you've got Ubuntu and Ubuntu recovery. So I suppose that's fine. So we'll get out of that. And I don't think there's anything else. I mean, we obviously want USB boot on. Internal UEFI shell. I guess we'll leave that disabled for now. And then... Oh, and this is interesting. You can select the operating system. I mean, I'm guessing they just had the same firmware flash to the Windows 8.1 units as well, so this would just be set to 8.1, but you could change that if you wanted to. Not that we have a Windows 8.1 bootable partition on here, but we'll save changes, and it should just automatically boot off of the USB drive now. So it's F10 to enter the boot menu. There isn't enough memory available to create a RAM disk service. Okay, that's not good. What are the startup settings? We can't even get into startup settings, and we can't even get, well, let's hit escape, I guess will bring us to the UEFI firmware. No, it won't. It'll just bring us back to here. Well, I think our best bet is just to use Rufus to create a Windows to Go image on our micro SD card here, and then just boot off of that. But yeah, I don't know of a way to really get around that. There's just physically not enough RAM for it to make the RAM disk and go through the installer. So we're going to try just bypass the installation completely. Alright, we've got that in, we're powering it back on. Let's see what happens. So it booted up to... Oh, actually, I wonder, is it going to recognize the SD card as a bootable device? Because this just went into Ubuntu. Let me power it off and boot back into the BIOS. We could use, put this on a USB drive, but this thing has a USB 2.0 port, so it's going to be pretty slow. But let's go over here to configuration, and okay, I see hard drive there. Hard drive part 0 OS bootloader, so we just have to move that up to the top and save. I assume that the hard drive is the SD card. Well, we're hanging on this menu for a little longer, which is a good sign if it's going to come up with the boot wheel. Or it may just hang here, who knows. Oh, and there it is. Oh, and it ran into a problem. Okay, what's the stop code? ACPI BIOS error, okay. I did, yeah, the first time I set it to MBR, this time I set it to GPT, UEFI. Minor problem there, nothing a little rewrite won't fix. Alright, so here is the current situation. This thing does have a UEFI firmware, so the problem wasn't that I wrote the image to the USB drive wrong. The problem actually is the firmware that is on this thing is only capable of booting a 32-bit Windows installation. So if we turn this off here, I'll just boot back into the BIOS and show you. If you remember this line here, this operating system selector where you could choose Ubuntu or Windows 8.1. If you notice, Ubuntu says 64-bit, Windows 8.1 says 32-bit. Now, of course, Windows 11 does not have a 32-bit release, so that's why I just left it on Ubuntu 14.04. When we do that and try to boot off of the drive, we get that BIOS error when it blue screens. If we change this over to Windows 8.1 and then save changes and exit, it will try to find this bootia32.efi file and then of course fail because one does not exist on this drive. So even though this thing has a 64-bit processor in it, which is the whole reason why I even tried to put Windows 11 on it to begin with, it's only capable of booting, at least what this would seem to say, a 32-bit Windows installation. So we have a couple of options here. We could try just give up, but I want to try and throw a couple more things at this, because I figured maybe if we try to update the BIOS on this thing, we could get past whatever error it was throwing at us when we had the operating system set to Ubuntu 64-bit. Unfortunately, Intel, being the great people they are, removed all of those downloads from their website at some point. However, thanks to somebody on the Internet Archive who archived this stuff earlier this month, we have a BIOS file for the first-gen compute stick that was downloaded from Intel in 2023, so I'm pretty sure this is probably going to be the latest release of the BIOS that was pushed out by them. So we're going to plug this in. I'm just going to remove the SD card here. And when we power this off and turn it back on, there is an option, I believe you press F7 while booting up to launch into the BIOS updater. And there's our BIO file, so we'll select that. Are you sure you wish to overwrite the BIOS with fc0040.bio? We'll press enter for yes, and let's see if this works. If it doesn't, hey, we're going to probably brick the thing and end the video here, but let's hope for the best. And you can see right here, updating to revision, and it's got 2019.0620.2018, so that is newer than the original 2015 release there. And again, I don't know if this will actually make a difference, but I figured it's something worth trying. Okay, it finished. I assume it's rebooting now. So let's just see if it... Okay, of course, it's not going to detect anything because we don't have a bootable device. So we're going to unplug our drive that had the BIOS image on it, and let me try to just put back in the Windows installer image. Now this is where it was erroring out saying that it couldn't create a RAM disk. That's probably still going to happen, but you know, it's worth a shot. I'm actually curious if we go into the BIOS just to see if we have any more options in there, because I'm hoping the Windows to go image on this SD card here at least errors out with something a little bit more descriptive than BIOS error. So now the operating system selector has Windows 8.1/10 32-bit and then Ubuntu 14.04 LTS 64-bit. So that's the same. I don't see any additional options. Okay, so we got to set the boot device order. Let's do that, and then, I mean, this is, if we leave it on Windows, it's just going to do the same thing and error out and complain about the lack of the 32-bit EFI image to boot from. So there's that. So yeah, we have to leave it on Ubuntu 64-bit. And yeah, same exact error about the RAM disk, not surprising. So let's swap over to the Windows to go image. And we will have to boot back into the BIOS to change the boot device order, although we could just load up the boot menu and do that as well. That's another option. Yep, ACPI BIOS error. So here's our next plan. Let's change the boot device order and have the Ubuntu bootloader before, and we also have Ubuntu recovery. We have this same thing twice, the Ubuntu recovery OS bootloader. We can try the Ubuntu bootloader and see if maybe it recognizes, like if Grub's able to see the SD card. Ubuntu, advanced options for Ubuntu, system setup, and restore to factory state. Alright, well, we can open up a command line here, and see, this is the thing. What is going to be, so HD0 MS-DOS 2. So I'm guessing HD0 is probably the SD card because HD1 has GPT 4, 3, and 2 on it. What is it, just boot HD0? Is it as simple as doing that? You need to load the kernel first. Alright, well, Stack Overflow has a solution here. So let's try this, NTFS, and then set root equals, and this, I'm assuming that HD0 is the SD card, and GPT is the partition, so we'll do GPT0, And then chain loader, boot mgfw.efi. Okay, disk HD0 GPT0 not found. Could be MS-DOS1. Did that actually do it? Oh, it did work. Okay, so yeah, it just did the exact same error, but that actually worked. Okay, that's cool. Unfortunately, it doesn't make a difference. So even going through the Ubuntu bootloader just results in the same BIOS error. So I don't really think there's a way around this. I mean, maybe we could try one of the other, I mean, there is that MS-DOS2 partition. Yeah, it's not finding that file. Now, HD1 has to be the, yeah, so that has to be the Ubuntu partition. I think we're kind of in a bit of a predicament here because I don't really see a workaround to this. I mean, I guess we could install, you think we could install Windows 11 in a VM on Ubuntu? That's probably our best bet. Yeah, screw it, let's do it. Oh geez, where do I even begin? We had a lot happen between then and now. I guess I can start at the beginning because that makes sense. So when I tried to go through the updater on the original install of Ubuntu on here, it eventually ran out of space because again, there's only an 8 GB drive in this thing. And we were already using about 6 GB just with the Ubuntu install on here, so we weren't really going to be able to fit like the ISO file or, you know, much else on that drive. So what I decided to do was install another distro on this SD card here and just boot off of that. I first tried to use the latest version of Ubuntu, that didn't work. Then I tried Lubuntu, which is a more lightweight edition, that didn't work either. The only thing I was able to get to install was Ubuntu 14.04. So this is that install running now off of the SD card, and this is a 64 gig card, so we have a lot more space. One of the downsides is the wireless driver did not install, and I wasn't able to get that working properly, so we are using a USB Ethernet adapter right here, and it did recognize that, and so we are on the network. I was able to get this system up to date, install VirtualBox, and we are now going to see if we can install Windows 11 in it. So we're going to make a new virtual machine. And Windows 10 appears to be the latest OS in here that we can select. This might be a bit of an older version. I did get this through Terminal. And yeah, so this is where I thought we were going to run into problems. Again, this system only has 1 GB of RAM. So we're not going to be able to allocate all of that to the virtual machine. I mean, I guess we could try, but it would just probably cause the system to crash. So we're going to have to allocate, I guess we'll do 512 and just see... you know, how that works, and we'll make a virtual drive, we'll make it dynamically allocated, and let's do 32 gigs, I suppose that's fine. And then we'll go into settings here and attach the ISO file to the disk drive. So we'll go in here, it is under downloads, and there it is. Yeah, okay, we get the exact same thing. There's not enough memory available to create a RAM disk service. So, okay, yeah, this isn't looking very good. You know what? We can just try to up this to the full 1024 megabytes, but, oh yeah, see, we can't even do that. Invalid settings detected. More than 75% of the host's memory is assigned to the virtual machine, so you can't even do that. Not surprising, so we have to lower this, I guess, to the orange here. Is probably the, yeah, so right there, 677 appears to be the most we can do. So we'll try that, but it's probably just going to do the exact same thing. Oh, whoa. Oh, and it just crashed. Okay, so yeah, that's not terribly surprising. So even with the most amount of memory you can possibly allocate to it, it still didn't work. But that's interesting that, like, you know, just trying to install it on this directly, it immediately failed with the whole RAM disk thing, but it didn't seem to do that with less memory in the virtual machine. Okay, well, there's been even some more developments, and unfortunately the long and short of it is we still can't get Windows 11 to boot on this thing, but I did try a couple more methods of doing this. First of all, I did update the version of VirtualBox. It was running a really old version, like version 4. something, or 4.3.4, I think, which is from like 2016. That's the version that's in the repository, just the default list of repositories that come with Ubuntu 14.04. But VirtualBox 6.0 is the newest version that still supports Ubuntu 14.04, and it's not in the Software Center. This just shows up when you open up the DEB file that I downloaded from Oracle. So yeah, I installed this. I went and tried to do the same thing we did before. That didn't work. So then I moved to trying to boot a pre-existing virtual machine, or at least a pre-existing VDI file, and attach that to a new VM. I did the latter first and it failed to boot, so then I actually downloaded this image from Microsoft. It's like a pre-configured eval VM, and you can see here it says aborted because it will get to the boot screen and the boot wheel will go around a couple times and then it will just crash immediately. And this poor thing is just getting maxed out every time that I do this. I mean, it just locks up, like the whole system is just frozen right now. I'm moving the mouse around, we got nothing. Oh, and look at what happens when I try to move the window around. Isn't that awesome? Oh, I think that was the whole... Oh, yeah, I guess our session crashed. Yep, that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, we just got nothing opened up right now. So, moral of the story is, you're not going to be able to get Windows 11 running on the first-gen compute stick, at least this iteration of it right here. I would imagine that if you got the Windows variant that had double the RAM, you would probably have some better results, even if you did have to go into the BIOS, set it to Ubuntu 64-bit, install Ubuntu 14.04, and then try to go through this whole virtual machine route. I think you would probably get a little bit further than we did here at the very least. But even that's something you probably don't really want to waste your time trying, because this hardware is just so old. So yeah, I think that is pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Although, if you want some more Intel Compute Stick content, by sheer coincidence, once again, Action Retro has published a video on the Intel Compute Stick over on his channel that I would recommend checking out, because he actually got a newer variant of it and was able to do some more things with it, install, you know, like a third-party operating system, and just mess around with it, have a little bit more success than we did here. And I do really mean this is a coincidence. I know this has happened numerous times, and it does maybe seem like there's something, like, you know, going on in the background here, but no, it's just like, I don't know, man. I've been working on this video for like a week now, and he just published his episode today as I'm finishing up recording this clip here and kind of putting the final touches on my video. That being said, Sean, if you're watching, I don't really know what it is between us. Like, we've got kind of this weird dynamic going on now, because this has happened numerous times, and Sean can attest, we've not talked about this behind the scenes. Like, we've not planned any of this to happen with, what was it, the HP touchpad and the eye opener. I think he was working on one video around that same time as well. Also, LGR published his video on the eye. Like, this is just weird that this stuff happens. But that's pretty much all I have to say about this thing. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, get subscribed, maybe consider becoming a patron or a channel member to get early access to these videos before anybody else. But either way, I just want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.